occupied.
Joining us live on LBC News, Professor Amnon Aaron, Professor of International Politics of the Middle East at City St George's, University of London. Thank you very much for your time tonight. It's quite striking what the Foreign Office said earlier, deciding to put out that statement, saying it's deeply concerned by what Israel is doing in the occupied West Bank. What's your take on what's going on?
Well, I think to some extent, of course, the Foreign Office captured what was going on in the West Bank and the very assertive methods used by the Israelis. I think there are two other factors that should be mentioned. One is the fact that Iran is also ramping up its attempts to smuggle in weapons to the West Bank, and that's militarizing the situation. And of course, the ongoing weakness of the Palestinian Authority, the PA, reflected in the fact that it has really lost quite a lot of control over the northern parts of the West Bank, where the Israeli military is currently operating. So I think it's the combination of these three factors that have really come to the fore at the moment.
And there have been concerns for a long time, haven't there? Several months now that the whole region could become engulfed in conflict. We've got the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza ongoing. This in the West Bank. Israel and Lebanon are there's skirmishes there in the north as well. As you mentioned, Iran just around the corner. This all doesn't sound like things are simmering down at all.
No, they're not. And in fact, it's very tragic that we've got here, if you like, two trends that are not meeting. One is the humanitarian suffering in Gaza, in Israel, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, and so on. But then on the other hand, we've got the strategic logic as it is interpreted by, if you like, the leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu, Hassan Nasrallah of Hezbollah, the Iranian leadership, and so on, who seem to believe that they can still achieve some strategic gains from prolonging the war rather than reaching a ceasefire. And of course, Yahya Sinwar of Hamas as well in that group. And these two logics, the strategic and the humanitarian, are really in conflict with each other. And the main, people who are bearing the brunt are really the people across the region.
Are we any closer to a ceasefire in Gaza? To things moving there?
It's extremely difficult to say, but at the moment it seems that Israel and Hamas are still entrenched in their position. The Israelis are refusing to reach a ceasefire that doesn't include that does include a request or a demand from them not to renew the war. And Hamas, on the other hand, are refusing to negotiate along those lines. In other words, in any kind of scenario that leaves Israel the ability or to renew the war again. So this really is the crux of the issue. The Israelis unwilling to conclude negotiations that put a demand on them to stop the war, and Hamas unwilling to progress unless Israel agrees to that demand in the first place. And that's where we're stuck.
And how significant is it that we are approaching the first anniversary? Because that's going to, in some ways, it's very much going to bring this story back into the public consciousness, isn't it?
Yes, I think in terms of the public consciousness, it is significant. But I think in terms of the development of on the ground, the anniversary is perhaps less significant. As you said before, the region is in such a combustible state, especially on the border between Israel and Lebanon. That's really the area that could potentially ignite a regional conflict. And that's precisely what the Americans are trying to avoid, especially also in the wake of the campaign, the election campaign, by first of all trying to really prolong the negotiations as much as possible, and also deploying a very, very formidable military force throughout the region to contain and to deter Iran from still living up on its promise to avenge the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran a few weeks ago.
Professor Amnon Aaron from City St George's, University of London, thank you very much for joining us here on LBC News tonight.